So we're a little late. Apologies, everybody. 6:20. I would love to call the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting to order. This is our regular meeting, Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. Our first order of business is to approve, I have too many things going on here, approve our minutes. Oh wait, I will first ask if the meeting's been properly warned, Peter.
Yes, it has.
Thank you. And our next order of business is to approve the minutes of August 18th. So I will entertain a motion in that regard.
I move to approve the minutes of August 18th, 2020.
Thank you. Ian has moved to approve the minutes of August 18th. Is there any comments or notices on those minutes? Seeing none, I will entertain, I will take a vote. All those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
And that would be none opposed, 5-0. Thank you. Next up is Chair's remarks. I do have some remarks. So last night, because of a quirk of how late we got done with town meeting, and it was a successful town meeting. I want to congratulate everybody for their fortitude and not only surviving a pretty long one, certainly not a record for Brattleboro, but a pretty long one, especially when you're mostly seated the entire day. But I think it went off pretty well, and everyone should be commended for all the work that was done, especially town staff and all RTM members. So last night, because of that, we had to wait for our organizational meeting. And last night I had the honor of being reelected to the chair of the select board. And I wanted to take a moment to reiterate my commitment to serving all residents of my town equally. And what that means from my perspective is to be very laser focused about the business we must do here for Brattleboro and the time it takes to do this business. I want to respect the energy and the time of our hardworking town employees, many of whom are along for the ride with us during each and every select board meeting. And I also want to respect people like Nolan here with us every time from Bcdp, our dedicated ASL interpreters. You see Elizabeth here with us at the moment, and they switch up. You'll watch them all night. Our local journalists, both print and online, who all do an excellent job at communicating the multiple complex issues we navigate as a board every time we meet. What am I getting at here? Well, I just wanted to get us to be efficient with our deliberations so that we have the energy to make good decisions for Brattleboro. And we do have to limit the number and duration of sidebar personal agendas and commentary during our meetings. And I pledge to do better from now on, even better, hopefully, at keeping this body more focused on doing our town business here. One way I'm going to do this is to be more strictly enforcing of my previous request for any commenter to limit themselves to 2 minutes. I'll be starting a time clock each time here, and I think I'll look into putting a time clock on the screen so that speakers will also know their time remaining. It's something we might try. The exception to this is going to be that if you've been invited to make a presentation before the board, of course, which is the equivalent of sitting at our table when we did have in-person meetings, then I or our town manager will be coordinating that with you, and we will still be limiting duration and number of participants at the table, so to speak, with cameras activated. Board members, of course, will not be timed, but they know that I won't be shy in reminding them to stay on topic, and I ask them to do the same for me. If you do want to make a comment or ask a question for future follow-up, please turn on your camera when you're requested to. Tell us your name and at the very least what town you reside in. These are absolutely public meetings and anyone is welcome to attend, but for your comment to have relevance and usefulness to us, we need to know who you are and what your connection is to the town of Brattleboro. And please, again, keep your comments brief and on point so that we can finish our business and end these meetings at a reasonable hour, which will go much better for all of us and our brains. I'm going to end with my nerdy quote, which I used once before. It's from Star Trek, and it continues to guide my thinking here. The quote is, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one." Please help me in keeping us all focused on making Brattleboro an even better place for everyone. And that's my comments for today. Next up, I have manager's comments on our agenda.
Thank you. I have two quick comments this evening. The first is to piggyback on your reference to the representative town meeting at the beginning of your comments. You thanked town staff, and on behalf of town staff, I want to acknowledge to something the select board's aware of and many of the town meeting reps are aware of, but I want the broader community to know that Patrick Moreland, the assistant town manager, kind of put us all up on his shoulders and carried us forward in terms of the tremendous effort that was required, first to set up representative town meeting in a way that would be secure and where the voting integrity of what goes on in the meeting could be maintained, and we could make sure that the meeting was accessible to the public, but where only certified representatives to town meeting were inside the meeting voting. There was a lot of advanced work required for that. Patrick did a great job with that. Even more so, we discovered as we were getting closer to town meeting that the special protections that had been put in place in order to ensure the integrity of the meeting actually were making it really hard for lots of people to access the meeting. We did a practice run, as you know, week before. Not very many people were able to just slide right into that meeting and have a successful experience. And so with 7 days notice, we learned that there was a tremendous amount of additional work to be done. Patrick did the lion's share of that, and most of it was in one-on-one communications with members of representative town meeting. The sum total of all that and supporting efforts from others of us did in fact lead to a 13-hour meeting that was pretty seamless by Zoom standards for our first effort to do a meeting of that scale and that importance in this format. So I just want to make sure that it's really clear for the record the extremely heavy lift that required and the degree to which Patrick did it himself, calling on others of us for some support when he needed it, but it was really great work. So he's behind the scenes somewhere, but on touching the buttons tonight, but thank you, Patrick, for all of it. And then I also want to celebrate and announce to the community that the skate park is just about finished. The concrete is curing. There are some finishing touches that need to be done with the land around the skate park. And on Saturday morning, the 3rd of October at 11 o'clock in the morning, there'll be a dedication ceremony up there. So we want to invite the community to come out and celebrate this long-awaited opening of this facility for folks to be able to go up there at the top of Memorial Park, enjoy the skateboarding opportunity that it represents, and probably the skate park that has the best view of any around. So we'll look forward to cutting that ribbon on October 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Exciting stuff there. Very much so. The next up is other select board comments and committee reports. What do we have, folks? And apologies, I have to adjust my screen here a little bit. And Daniel, go ahead.
On Friday, Chief Fitzgerald announced that he will be retiring as of the end of this year. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank him for his service to the town of Brattleboro. And I'm sure that there will be more opportunities to come in the future where we will kind of acknowledge all of the work that he has done and led. But I just wanted to take this opportunity at the first select board meeting since then to say thanks and wish him well.
Absolutely, thank you. And that I noticed that is 20 years of service, I believe, according to some of the service pins that are being handed out right now. Some impressive service to the town, but 20 years, Chief. Anyone else with comments or committee reports? Ian.
Yeah, I just want to kind of pile on the praise that's already been made. Yeah, Daniel, thank you for bringing that up. And I really want to echo that. And yeah, Patrick, I am so grateful for all the time that you put in to making RTM a success. And I think there are some small things, maybe some bigger things that we can do differently if we need to do this again. But on the whole, we were able to execute an effective representative town meeting entirely online for the first time in Vermont history. So that is an incredible accomplishment, and I'm just very grateful for all the work that Patrick put into doing it, and the rest of town staff, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Liz.
I salute all the people who have been saluted, and I would like to add Lauren Crisp as moderator. He did a phenomenal job, and you know, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? You did a great job. I'm very pleased and grateful.
Thank you, Liz. All right, does that
I think Brandy needs to be unmuted.
Oh, no, Brandy, sorry about that. That's probably explains your hand up. I apologize. Nope, you need to do your audio trick.
I said I'm going to pretend that wasn't intentional.
Certainly was not.
Uh-huh.
I'm juggling my windows, so I didn't get to see your hand. So.
I have yet to put together the kind of statement that it takes for me to want to thank Chief Fitzgerald for the work that he's done. In my time for a year and a half of working outreach with Groundworks, I worked with the chief and others who I'm going to name when I write this up. And while I don't think it's any surprise to people where I sit on certain sides of movements that are taking place, the human beings that we have in our department are good, caring humans, and Gunny is one of the best. And I cried when I heard that he was retiring for a few reasons. One, because I hadn't reached out yet in the middle of all of this to talk with him personally, and also because I'm worried that the size of the shoes that need to be filled to keep things moving in a community and progressive fashion with our police department are enormous. And so I'm apprehensive, I'm appreciative, and all of those things.
Thank you, Brandy. Okay. If that does it for select board comments and committee reports, it's now time for public participation. I usually do a little preamble to let people know that they can, if they don't already know, click on the participants button, which is down towards the bottom of the regular Zoom meeting screen. Usually that will bring you up on participants panel on the right side, and then one of those choices should be raise hand. And that's how we raise our hand. Somebody just did, and I'll just finish by saying that right now, public participation is for everything that you might want to talk about that does not have an item for today's agenda. So if you are, if your subject matter is on tonight's agenda, please save your comment and put down your hand for now. If not, you have a question or a general comment for the select board, now is the time. The first hand I saw go up was somebody who's simply a slash, so I'm going to ask Patrick to bring that person up, and I'll ask you to identify yourself and let us know where you're from, and welcome.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes.
This is my first time using this, and I'm very confused. I'm sorry. I'm 38, and I used to like be on top of stuff like this, but like now I feel like I've been left behind. I really am. I started out using Facebook like in 2004 when it first came out, and now I'm just like, like an old boomer now at this point.
Great. Could you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Joseph, and I'm from the town. My name is Joseph Runge, and I'm from the town of Newfane. And I spoke to two of the town representatives today via phone about some problems I'd had with stores and businesses in town adhering to the both the state and municipal mask mandates when it comes to both of the exemptions that were carved out in the state and municipal regulations in regard to individuals with disabilities, be they something like emphysema or hyperventilation or asthma or like reduced lung capacity or anything like that. It seems like it's not being applied. Most places do a good job of ensuring that the people have masks on. What they tend, in my personal experience, to fail to do is to simply follow the law and allow people in their establishments who, like myself, have a reduced breathing capacity, who cannot wear a mask. And I mean, I have no problem providing a doctor's note, but I've got the town's form right here, that what was issued, and it says that cloth or face covering should not be placed on anyone under 5, anyone who has trouble breathing, or anyone who is unconscious, incapable, or otherwise unable to remove a mask without assistance. I ran into this actually just yesterday at a car dealership in Brattleboro, where I wasn't allowed to use their waiting room with, cushy chairs and Wi-Fi and snacks and TV, and had to stand outside in the wind, and it was quite humiliating. All because I have a disability that does not allow me to wear a mask, and I can provide, even though the law says I don't have to provide, like a doctor's note. The gentleman who even there pointed to one of his black employees, said, no, this guy over here, he's black. If I told him he had to go out, wait outside, that would be discrimination. If I tell you to go out because you have a disability, that's not discrimination. And I really take umbrage at that kind of treatment, to be honest.
We have limited time, and I think you've had a couple conversations with select board members, so we're pretty aware of your issues you're having, and they sound unfortunate because you might not know that we did a town ordinance, I'm sorry, not an ordinance, a resolution, and then that got superseded by the state's resolution. So I don't have that wording in front of me, but I'm pretty sure the state also has an exception for.
Yes, the state has an exemption that is almost word for word, and I've got that in front of me here too.
That's fine. Joseph, one thing is that we cannot engage in a conversation as a board about something that hasn't been warned. So this was a good opportunity to hear that feedback about how things are going. We have limited resources to be able to patrol every interaction, obviously, that you're going to have with merchants. I will say that I hope people will clearly understand that there are exceptions for people that have medical reasons to not wear masks. But beyond that, I'm not sure this board can do anything for you at this moment.
Well, I mean, is, for example, the town, police department going to be aware of the fact that if they get called the next time I enter an establishment and assert my rights under either the state or municipal guidelines, are they going to be aware that it's not a case of trespassing, that yes, under state and municipal guidelines and laws, that I have the right to be there as an individual with a disability who cannot wear a mask? That's my biggest fear.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your comment. I'm going to let Peter Elwell make one comment about this, and then we'll have to move on. But I do appreciate your concerns.
Okay.
Go ahead, Peter. if you don't mind.
Sure. So from the beginning, as far as the town's action on this, what we've indicated is that the police are available to come and address situations where disputes arise related to the wearing of masks, but that otherwise there is not an enforcement mechanism related to the town's mask order or face coverings order as adopted by the select board. The state does have an enforcement component to theirs. I can't speak for the state on exactly how that functions, but we do have contact information for the folks who come out and look into concerns that are raised about how the mask requirements issued by the governor are or are not being enforced in business settings. So if you contact me tomorrow, my contact information is all available on the town's website. I'm the town manager. You could also just write to me at townmanager@brattleboro.org. I'll be happy to give you the contact information for the state enforcement arm related to masks throughout, the wearing of masks or not wearing of masks throughout Vermont.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. What was your name again?
Elwell.
Elwell, thank you.
E-L-L.
Thanks, Joseph. Apologies to have to move on here. Next up, we have Gary Stroud. Hi, Gary. Hello, sir.
Hey guys, how are you? I just want to say it was a great 13-hour international flight meeting. That's what it's like flying international. 13. Wow. And I mean, is there a recovery place for Zoom meeting people? Or I had so many.
Gary, don't scare our future town meeting reps.
No, it was.
There was a nice
awesome.
leisurely hour lunch mixed in there.
It was awesome. I tell you, it was handled well. And like, kudos to Patrick and to you guys too. Everything went just splendid. Looking forward to more of these type of meetings. So I guess I was going to ask you guys what you thought between this meeting and what do you see the next town meeting, what it would be like if we were back on? Would it be the same, or what improvements do you see down the road of these type of Zoom meetings? I mean, like I said, this one was awesome, and God forbid if we have to have another one with this COVID, how would it be handled next time? Where do you see handling it? What way do you see handling it better?
Ian's got a hand up, and then maybe Liz.
So as I understand, because this is not publicly warned discussion, we can't really get into it, Gary, but I think that it would be a great idea to maybe put that as an agenda item for something to discuss at some later select board meeting, because yeah, I have some interesting thoughts, and I think a lot of other people do too. And constructive criticism would be really welcome. So I would say I would encourage the board to add that to an agenda item for maybe, I don't know if we have a week that doesn't have a lot of things on it, but yeah, I think that would be really good. I have some thoughts for sure.
Yeah, I just want to say it was awesome, and everybody handled that well, and I'm very proud and looking forward to a lot of great things in the future. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Gary. And Liz, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to say it's too soon.
I'm a planner.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, honestly. And I was also going to say to Ian, let's be very careful not to forget that this is RTM's business to be talking about such things. But certainly we could have a meeting that helps, spark that discussion, helps be the place to kick that off. But definitely not the select board's place.
Maybe it's not really our place to have that. I'm also, maybe I'm incorrect in that. I think a discussion somewhere would definitely.
Oh, no. I know that if we don't acknowledge that we certainly are not the boss of RTM, we should just make sure we keep that in mind.
Fair.
That's a fair answer. I appreciate that, people. And then thank you again for such an awesome meeting.
Thanks, Gary. And thanks for participating yourself, of course. I see no other hands up at the moment. So I think we could move on into the bulk of our meeting. The first thing we are going to be tackling is an item for liquor commissioners, so I would entertain a motion to become liquor commissioners.
So moved.
Daniel has made a motion to become liquor commissioners. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Brandy just disappeared again and then came back. Is that happening to everybody or just me? Oh, okay. Thank you. So we're now liquor commissioners. Peter's going to tell us about an application from a long-established inn on Putney Road with new owners, I believe.
Exactly that. So the inn on Putney Road at 192 Putney Road has been a bed and breakfast for some time, has had liquor license in the past. There are new owners there who need to obtain a new first-class liquor license and, for their operations. It's my understanding that Mr. Makian is in the meeting. If you'd like to hear directly from him, I can say, as I usually do at this moment, on behalf of town staff, that the matter is on the agenda and ready for your approval tonight because it has been thoroughly reviewed by staff and approved by the police and fire departments. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I do see, is it Paul? Raised a hand. You're welcome to join us. Patrick will send you a little, there you go.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about your plans. I'm familiar with your building. A couple friends of mine used to own it, but it might have been 2 owners ago, Tim and Amy Brady.
Tim and Amy, yeah, they had a pub there, I believe, at the time. I think that's where Tim may have started his brewing experience. The liquor license went to Rhonda, who was the following owner, and the previous owner to us let that liquor license lapse. We would like to start up the liquor license or have a liquor license again so we can serve beer and wine to our guests and also have it for sale for them to purchase at the inn when they would like. Also, if we have events, small events at the inn, we would like to be able to serve liquor at those events.
I see. How many, could you remind me how many rooms you might have?
We have 6 rooms total. And generally speaking, the capacity is 12 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that bar, by my recollection, was tiny, maybe a 3 to 4 person bar. So
Yeah, I think so.
Is that still about the same?
Yeah, we won't really have a formal bar at the inn any longer. It won't be. I think previously with under Tim and Amy, I believe that anybody who wanted to could come and purchase beers or whatever at the pub there at the inn. This is really meant just for guests. We don't imagine that we'll be selling beer and wine to people who are not guests. I can imagine that if we have some kind of events at the inn, if it's say if it's a music event or if it's I don't know, a reading or something like that, we might look to sell beer and wine at something like that also to
Okay.
people who come to that.
Thank you. Other questions, board members? No? I don't feel so bad leaping forward with some questions then.
Yeah.
All right, well, before you go away, I'll entertain a motion then. Liz.
Okay. I move to approve a first-class liquor license for Grand Idea LLC doing business as Inn on Putney Road, located at 192 Putney Road.
Thank you. I have to apologize because my document disappeared on me and I had no idea. Okay, sorry about that. Liz has made a motion to approve a first-class liquor license for Grand Idea LLC, doing business as Inn on Putney Road, located at 192 Putney Road. All those in favor indicate by saying aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed is none, and that's 5-0. Congratulations and
Thank you very much.
good luck.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion to dissolve as liquor commissioners.
So moved.
Daniel closes us out as well. All those in favor? Raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
That's 5-0. Thank you. Next up, we have to enter into water and sewer commissioners. So guess what?
So moved.
All right, thanks. Brandy has moved to become water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor, say aye.
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 5-0. First up is a discussion of the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Waste Process Line Project. And that would be Dan Tyler joining us. Welcome, Dan.
Hi. So this is the process water waste line that we've talked about a few times. Daniel's Construction has been in and installed the new culvert in the brook. We've approved the engineering services through Dufresne Group, and our crews have started the preliminary work of installing the line. So we need to buy a bunch of pipe. There's about 3,800 feet of pipe and 30 various fittings, 8-inch PVC pipe. We put it out to bid. FW Webb of Rutland was the low bidder for $31,211.14. We had two other bidders, Ferguson Waterworks and EJ Prescott. We checked the bids over and we're recommending that we accept FW Webb's low bid.
Thanks, Dan. Seems fairly straightforward. Questions, board members? Gosh, come on. Is it unusual, Dan, that one bid is less than $2 away from another bid?
Yeah, those were pretty close.
Not a lot of leeway. I mean, sometimes we're used to very disparate bidding, but I guess when it comes to pipes and materials like that, it's a pretty tight margin.
It sounds like it, and the prices are going up, so they're going to be excited to have this approved.
Okay. Board members, anyone want to make a motion for this
I'll make a motion.
absolute need? Thank you, Brent.
Let's see. Let me just adjust my ear here. Okay. I move to award a bid for pipe and fittings for the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Waste Process Line Project to FW Webb in the amount of $31,211.14.
Thanks, Brandy. Brandy has made a motion to award a bid for pipe and fittings for the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Waste Process Line Project to FW Webb in the amount of $31,211.14. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
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 It's 5-0. Thank you, Dan. And I think we're staying with you for the next subject, which is a tank cover, which Ian is excited about.
Yes, this is that sludge tank cover for the odor problem. The contractor is awaiting shop drawings. Once those come in, we'll have a pre-construction meeting, and it looks like they're going to complete the installation this winter. So what we're asking for here is to approve engineering construction services from Aldrich and Elliott Group. They designed the cover. They've worked up the bid documents, which is part of this cost. And from here, they'll oversee the work, review pay requests, and then prepare record drawings when the project's finished.
Thank you. Question, Ian?
So is this a custom sludge tank cover?
Essentially, there's companies that produce these covers, and the tank is really custom to the plant. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a standardized thing, like they actually have to build it specific to the specifications of our sludge tank.
Correct.
Any other questions? Liz?
I just want to say I think we've adequately covered this topic.
I think we did, but I want to make sure Ian's, satisfied.
That was a good one, Liz. Good one.
I'll be here all night.
Great.
Most likely.
Twice on Sundays.
Oh, God. I just got it, Liz.
All right. Would any board member like to make a motion to move this along?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Ian.
I move to approve a contract with Aldrich and Elliott Group in the amount of $15,200 for engineering services related to the wastewater treatment plant tank cover project.
Ian has made a motion to approve a contract with Aldrich and Elliott Group in the amount of $15,200 for engineering services related to the wastewater treatment plant tank cover project. All those board members in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed is 0, so that's 5-0. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
And gosh, I've just forgotten. Do we have to get out of being wastewater?
Need to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners.
Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Brandy has made a motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. We have no unfinished business, but we got a fair amount of new business. So first up is the municipal planning grant application. And I think Sufilian, there she is, that magical fade in that her camera does. I like that. Hi, Sue.
Good evening, select board members.
Before you start,
I am here.
Before you start, I just wanted to say congratulations. I think you have 10 years with the town. I'm trying to stay on top of congratulating.
Thank you. I think it was last year, but thank you.
Oh, well, we got to update
11
that.
now.
11 years?
Even better.
Yeah. So thanks. I'm here tonight to request approval to apply for a municipal planning grant on behalf of the Planning Department and the Planning Commission. We're really excited. We are hoping to, with your approval, submit a grant application to do a comprehensive housing plan for Brattleboro, which to my knowledge has not been done. We want to basically look at the full spectrum of housing in Brattleboro to identify the needs, the opportunities, and develop strategies. And we plan to do this while maintaining an equity lens. Our proposal includes putting together a steering committee that includes some of the housing nonprofits and other private groups in town, developers, the tenants union. We think a steering committee is critical to basically, because we're not going to solve these housing challenges from the municipality alone. So we need these experts to kind of guide us in the right direction and be on board. And I do believe we have that. I've been involved with several people in town and several groups that have been talking about the housing challenges. So the plan, we're looking to apply for a $22,000 from the municipal planning grant, and we'll supplement that a little bit from the planning department's budget for a project total of just under $25,000. We have just to know that the project can happen. If we're awarded, we will go out with a request for a proposal or a request for qualifications, but we have talked to a planning firm, Camoin 310. Sorry, Camoin 310, who has confirmed that we can do the project for this amount. So I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Sue. This feels very needed for Brattleboro to have some information and data because we all know we have housing needs here. The extent to which, just having some numbers and some solid information behind it, I think is absolutely critical. Other board members?
No, I'm really, oh, sorry, Ian. I spoke before the hand.
Please, you can jump in. Okay, go ahead.
I'm really excited about this project. I'm excited to be able to watch it unfold, and I'm really curious to see what the outcome is. And I'm glad we're looking at it through a lens of equity, not just same, but what's equitable. How are we leveling the playing field? Because treating everybody the same is not always the best route. So I'm excited, and I can't wait to see the results.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ian if you want, or I'll go with Liz.
No, go ahead, Liz.
I just wondered, that just raised a question, when does Sue predict this study to be completed, provided we get the grant?
Yeah, so the application is due October 1st. We won't know of awards till December. The one consultant I was speaking with felt it was something they could do in about a 5 months time frame. So maybe this time next year we could have something.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had the same question, Liz. Thank you. Yeah, I read this, and my mind has kind of been in housing, especially with some of the other things that have been before the board recently, and then also some things that are coming up. And it's just so clear that we need more data. We need more discussion, and I'm really excited about this, and I'm excited to vote for it.
Terrific. If board members don't have a burning further comment, or Daniel, I'll go to a public hand up, and it looks like it's Joseph again, if I remember that slash correctly. Or was that up the whole time? You tell me. Board members, do you? Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
Joseph.
Unmuted. Okay. So yeah, I guess this is the first time I've joined one of these Zoom calls. I was just wondering if someone could give me a quick elevator speech of what this housing thing is and what it's a part of. Just quick elevator speech, like I'm from another planet or something.
Well, Sue, do you want to take a crack at that, or it's up to you? I can.
Sure. So one of the responsibilities of the Planning Commission is to, we basically are charged with writing a town plan, which under Vermont state law has various sections. Housing is one of them. The plan is eventually adopted, or hopefully adopted, by the select board. So housing is just one of those areas in Brattleboro where, we have census data, but we don't have a lot of on-the-ground data. We know that we have a very tight rental vacancy rate. We know that we haven't had a lot of successful new subdivision development, and we know that based on work with different nonprofits, that our housing match is not, our housing stock is not always a match for what people are looking for. It can be older. It can be because of electrical problems, or not electrical problems, but older electrical systems. It can be hard to get mortgages without having to make a lot of improvements to it. So it's really, this plan is looking at, getting some quantifiable data, but then also putting together a plan. Are there, further zoning changes that we can make to make it easier to construct housing in Brattleboro? Are there other, relationships with nonprofits or private? Are there other things that we can be doing to kind of help housing creation and affordability?
So is the idea to just sort of lower the price of housing by means of building more housing? Is that kind of the long and short of it?
How are you?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's trying to figure out what are the housing needs, and it might be at various levels. Sorry. It might be various housing needs throughout the community. It might be affordable housing. It might be the missing middle housing. It might be senior housing. So it's meeting the needs of the community and the future needs of the community. I mean, there's a lot of talk about COVID or climate refugees coming to Southern Vermont. So what are the needs if we're going to be able to meet people coming in? And then also what are the needs for the people that are already here?
Thanks, Joseph. I think I'll take another question if that's all right. And Witchy had a hand up. Hello.
Everyone, hi. My name is Witchy Artu, for those who don't know me. I actually was a former resident of Brattleboro, but this year got priced out. And now I live in Athens. So I just want to sort of explicitly express my support. I know that you don't need it, but just express my support for this. And just sort of like sort of in my experience with affordable housing and given that off the top of my head, I can name at least 5 people of color that have or are in the process of getting priced out in Brattleboro. I do want us to, in this process, maybe look into how to help people build wealth, because for a very long time, especially with people of color, we haven't been able to build wealth. And that has been a lot of the root issue, where we just can't afford everything all at once. And we just end up either without shelter or without food, and we sort of have to make those choices. And especially with affordable housing programs, which lock us into programs where we can't own property outright or those kinds of things. Just so with the equity lens, which I'm very excited about, just being aware of building wealth and creating paths to building wealth rather than more barriers in the process of trying to mitigate or put a Band-Aid on the issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Witchy. I was going to ask Witchy a question, but it's fine.
Oh, sorry, you could ask me a question. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, I thought, did you buy a farm outside of town? I was going to congratulate you on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we just bought a farm.
And I think that's amazing. So
thanks, Sam.
Congratulate you for that.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay. Great. So I have no other hands up for this. Do board members have any other thoughts or questions for Sue? Terrific. Well, who would like to make a motion?
Do we want to hear about the resolution as well? And then do them both? Or do we need to do these separately?
Explain what you mean there. I'm
Do you
sorry.
want me to tell you about the resolution?
I don't know. I mean, aren't there like 2 things that we need to approve? I know that they're sort of related, but is there anything to be said about that, or it's just?
I would agree. There's 2 things here. So first is the town's process where you need approval for the grant. I mean, maybe they could be together, but the other is the municipal planning grant does require that the select board pass a resolution and sign it. So that was included in your packets.
Thanks.
The substantive information related to both actions is the same. It's just that the state requires a select board adoption of the resolution.
Very good.
It's probably okay to combine them.
Sure. Into a motion that does one and the other, sure.
Okay. Well, it's our tradition that the chair does not make motions. Who would like to make a motion?
I can do it. I move to approve the planning department's application for a $22,000 grant, $22,000 2021 municipal planning grant from the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development to pay for a consultant to develop a housing action plan for the town. And I further move to adopt the FY21 municipal resolution for municipal planning grant. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Daniel, who has moved to approve the planning department's application for a $22,021 municipal planning grant from the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development to pay for a consultant to develop a housing action plan for the town of Brattleboro, and a motion to adopt the FY21 municipal resolution for a municipal planning grant. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you, board member. Thank you, Sue. Next up, we have a tiny grant, which we always like saying, for Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions. Sue?
So back in March, you approved the Conservation Commission applying for the tiny grant in the amount of $480. They are partnering with Lynn Levine, who is a forester, naturalist, and educator, as well as the Friends of the West River Trail, to create some signage in the Riverstone Preserve, which is off the West River Trail. Lynn is primarily doing the work with the Conservation Commission overseeing it. We were awarded the grant, I think, in July, and basically the Riverstone Preserve, there's a trail that's about 1/3 of a mile long, and the idea is to have some 8x10 signage that gives a little bit of the natural, tells a little bit about the natural environment. The Conservation Commission talked about it with Lynn at their September meeting, and there's a couple of other ideas. I know she walked the property with Rich Holshoe to see if there's a way to weave in some of the Abenaki information or words, or I'm not sure which way Rich and Lynn are going to take that. And then also, because it's a pretty short path, there was some ideas for either a scavenger hunt or some signage that's at children's level, kind of like a story walk. So we're asking that you accept the grant tonight. And this will be done by May.
Terrific. Any comments, questions? I know that portion of the trail, we have been biking that about every other week. So it's a special area. Board, anyone make a motion? Liz?
I love accepting money. I move to accept and appropriate a 2020 tiny grant in the amount of $480 from the Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions for the creation of an interpretive trail loop on the Riverstone Preserve on the West River Trail.
Thanks, Liz. Liz has made a motion to accept and appropriate a 2020 tiny grant in the amount of $480 from the Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions for creating an interpretive trail loop on the Riverstone Preserve located on the West River Trail. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sue, for joining us.
Thank you, Sue.
Next up, I believe Patrick himself, the subject of so much praise recently, is going to be joining us to tell us about a Bcdp grant application. What does that stand for, Patrick?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. That stands for the Vermont Community Development Program. And so thank you. I am here this evening to ask you to hold a public hearing and to authorize the submission of an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant for the Brattleboro Housing Authority in the amount of $42,722 to reimburse them for COVID-19 related expenses. And very much in keeping with the resolution for the municipal planning grant that the board just authorized. Similarly, we're asking the board to pass and adopt a resolution for grant application authority for this program. Both of these programs are administered by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, so they have a variety of very similar requirements. So for each of you who have been on the board for a little while and have seen a number of Vermont Community Development Program applications, you're probably very used to hearing that this program is all about affordable housing and economic development. So why the application for COVID-19 related expenses? Well, the answer for that is actually pretty straightforward. The state of Vermont, in their effort to broadly disseminate federal CARES Act funding to eligible nonprofit organizations, is making use of existing grant programs in order to be able to distribute these funds. And so they have set up within VCDP what they're calling the Municipal Public Facility and Service Program. And the explicit purpose of that program is to reimburse eligible nonprofits for COVID-19 related expenses. The town was contacted by 3 different nonprofit organizations, of which only the Brattleboro Housing Authority has made it all the way to the submission and public hearing process, largely because the Brattleboro Housing Authority is so accustomed to managing federally funded projects, and they're so capable of being able to demonstrate the household income of each of their residents. You know, they serve 446 residents here in Brattleboro. So they're very accustomed to managing federally funded projects, and they're uniquely capable of presenting the economic background of the households that they serve. And so this particular application to reimburse them for COVID-19 related expenses will score very well up at the state, and I know they're awaiting this application. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has, and I also know there are some folks here from Brattleboro Housing Authority if the board would like additional information.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. Liz?
Will the other people who didn't make it yet to the finish line keep trying?
In both cases, they basically let me know that they didn't want to continue participation.
Thank you.
Sure.
Peter, are you about to tell me to open a public hearing?
Yes, please.
You thought I had forgotten. I now declare the public meeting open. Is that sufficient?
Public hearing, yes.
Public hearing open. Sorry. It's been a long series of meetings the last few years. Hearings and meetings. All right, so we now are within the confines of a public hearing for this. Thank you, Peter. Other board questions? Liz?
Maybe the Brattleboro Housing Authority wants to tell us what they're going to do with the money.
And while that possibly is happening, Ian, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, can we also ask them to maybe just talk a little bit about what the COVID expenses were, COVID-related expenses were?
Terrific. I think I see Christine Hazard. Christine Hart. Sorry. There's a couple Christines.
Christine Hazard should be here.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
You're both welcome if we can fit in the...
So I will I'll let the boss go first.
All right.
Hi, this is Christine Hazard. Can you hear me? I'm not on video.
That's fine, Christine.
Okay, great. Hi. So I'm happy to answer both questions. So yes, this has already been spent. So this is the first, that's the first answer to your first question, which was we've already spent this money, and I'm happy to share with you for the second question what we spent it on. So we've incurred a lot of expenses, and some of which we've paid out of our operating fund, and also we got some CARES Act money from HUD, which resulted in $20,000 in addition to our operating fund. So we used that money to pay for maintenance overtime expenses, hazard pay, which we continue to pay for our maintenance providers because they're right on the front lines. We've also hired, we used some of that funding. We had a support staff that contacted residents almost daily to address needs throughout COVID-19, and that lasted from March until July. So these expenses are things that we haven't been able to cover, but we've had to continue to do, and largely that's a huge part of that is disinfecting. So we have 7 buildings that we disinfect regularly, daily, sometimes twice a day, and so we've continued to do that throughout the whole crisis. We also have had to spend the money on continuation of operations, so moving many of our employees to work remotely, and so we've incurred tremendous technology expenses. We also brought in a part-time nurse, and we've had extra nursing times for our support and services at home program. We also made our laundry free from March until almost the end of July for our residents, so that they didn't have to go out and get change, and they didn't have to leave the property if they couldn't. So that was a big expense. So that's the majority of the costs.
Thanks, Christine.
You're welcome.
Ian, did you want to follow up?
No, I just appreciate it.
Okay. Christine Hart, anything you'd like to add?
Just that we did apply to FEMA, and my batting average with them is as bad as it always has been. So they disapproved 53% of the money that we asked for. They approved out of $17,000, $600, and we have an appeal for $7,000. So none of that money is in this application. So we have been looking at other sources. I spent a full day on the phone trying to track down state and federal resources for us, and this was the only one that's available. So.
Thanks, Christine. Hang on, we are still in a public hearing, so I'd like to take a hand up, and it looks like it's Joseph again. Would you like to ask a question of?
Yes, I would. I'm not sure exactly who to direct it to. I guess it would be more toward the woman who was talking about some of the housing development that I had asked about earlier. And I heard this term thrown about a couple times during the meeting. I also hear it thrown about in sort of average political discourse. And it was very unsettling to me. It's this idea of affordable housing, which is, I think, so nebulous and ill-defined as to mean essentially nothing. And I'm just wondering, when they talk about building affordable housing in Brattleboro, like what exactly does that mean? Like affordable to me? I mean, I basically have like zero income myself and living off public assistance. I'm just really curious, like, can you give in number terms, dollars and cents, what affordable housing actually means, or is it just some feel-good kind of like pablum?
I'm gonna say that it's a little bit off topic for this, Joseph, because this is an existing set of housing. It's actually serves, these folks serve 446 residents within Brattleboro, quite a few people. But if one of the Christines or both would like to comment on the idea of affordable housing without going too deep into the woods, you're welcome.
Sure, I'm happy to try to answer your question, and you know, you are always free to call Brattleboro Housing Partnerships anytime and ask questions. I'm always available. We have a staff that's been working all through COVID, so we're there, you know, Monday through Friday. So very quickly, we do house many people in our community who some have no income, some are extremely low income, and we base their rent on a HUD subsidy, which is based on 30% of their income. So if someone is at zero, then it's based on that. If it's $900 a month, it would be based on that. And so the rent is based on 30% of their income. In a very, that's the short way of saying it. But I'm happy to go into further detail anytime if you have any questions.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, your name was again?
Sure, it's Christine. Yep, no problem. It's Christine Hazard, Hazzard.
Christine Hazard. Okay, all right, but it's not really possible to give an exact dollar figure of what constitutes affordable housing.
Well, it would be based on 30% of your income.
Okay.
And that, yep. We have rentals. Yep.
Oh, sorry, Christine. I'm interrupting Christine to allow Christine to speak.
Sure.
Well, I have the numbers because that's part of the grant. So of the 446 residents that we have, 329 of them have incomes that are lower than $16,000 if they're
a year.
Family, a year.
Okay.
So that's very low, and that's called extremely low income.
Yeah, that's below the federal poverty guidelines.
Are extremely low income.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
the definition of affordable.
It's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm just a little bit like autistic, and so sometimes I just need like hard numbers in order to understand things.
So but for us, because we house extremely low income people. 74% of our people our residents are at 30% of median or below.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Joseph. And thank you to the Christines. Yes, you can hang on for a moment. I guess the appropriate thing to do from my perspective here is to close out the public hearing. And then board, we can continue to discuss or make a motion. I'll just comment, it feels like completely appropriate use of Bcdp money to me. Anyone else have a comment, or Ian?
It's just clarification, but it's not Bcdp money, right? It's just going through them. Is that how, am I understanding that correctly?
So this money originated in the CARES Act rather than originating as part of the Community Development Block Grant Program, but it is being administered through the state in accordance with the same rules that VCDP operates under.
So essentially,
that's why the actions for you tonight look so familiar. Yeah. Even though the purpose of this particular amount of money is different than usual.
Yeah.
Because of COVID.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Good clarification. Thank you. All right. Well, anyone need to say anything else? Or Liz?
Are you ready for a motion?
I am, if the board is ready.
Well, I am. Is anyone not ready?
Good. No one's not ready. It's a good sign.
Okay, good. I move to approve the submission of an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant for the Brattleboro Housing Authority in the amount of $42,722 for COVID-19 related expenses. And I further move to adopt the resolution from the Vermont Community Development Program for the implementation grant application for the Brattleboro Housing Authority.
Liz has moved to approve the submission of an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant for the Brattleboro Housing Authority in the amount of $42,722 for COVID-19 related expenses, and has further moved to adopt the resolution from the Vermont Community Development Program for the implementation grant application for the Brattleboro Housing Authority. All those in favor, board members, say aye. Raise your hand for my visual
Aye.
affirmation. Thank you. That's 5-0. Terrific. Thank you to you both. All right. We are moving on to our item D, which is a winter fuel oil bid award, and Peter's going to tell us about that.
Thank you. So as we annually do, this bidding for winter fuel oil has been coordinated between the Wyndham Southeast School District and the town of Brattleboro. We pooled together on this because it makes us a larger buyer and we're able to get better pricing. So Finance Director Andre Yeager worked together with Frank Rucker, the business administrator for the school district. There were 6 different suppliers that did bid on this contract. The lowest bid is the best number in many years, the lowest price for this commodity in many years. That's reflective of what's happening out in the broader marketplace. But the price that Barrows and Fisher Oil here in Brattleboro provided in response to this solicitation of bids is $1.259 per gallon. So basically $1.26 a gallon. There were 5 other bids that ranged between $1.34 and $2.11 per gallon. But we are recommending that the award go to the low bidder of Barrows and Fisher for the $1.259 per gallon. The town's portion of this is based on an estimated consumption of 70,000 gallons of heating oil in this coming winter. In fact, our actual consumption depends on a couple of different things. We've been reducing our overall demand for oil by switching in a couple of different locations already, and we're hoping to do this in a couple more as we make renovations to alternative sources of heat, renewable sources of heat, as opposed to using oil. So we've done some of that already, and that has reduced our annual buy. And then there's also just the variable of how harsh a winter we have. So of course we can't know yet how that'll turn out, but in our historical usage, some years we have used the full amount of our estimated consumption in the bid, and some other years we have not. And so the 70,000 is an estimate. Wouldn't be able to tell you until next spring what we'll actually spend and use under this contract.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah. Board members, questions? Daniel.
Thanks, Peter, for providing the context for our fuel oil usage over the last several years. I'm really pleased that we are able to get such a good price from a local employee-owned business. So that feels good to me. Regular select board members may remember from a few years back when I produced a tape measure at our annual fuel oil purchase and showed the town how much CO2 it would emit, and it still remains a lot. I'm glad that it's going down. And I was just thinking, as Peter was kind of providing the context there, like obviously fuel oil prices right now are very much abnormal. But as we move forward in the next couple of years, if oil were to remain cheap relative to other fuels, I wonder how that would impact our decision to move away from fossil fuels. I hope that we would take the kind of the high road, but and this is an entirely irrelevant at this moment today comment, but it just kind of got me thinking.
Thank you. I don't think it's irrelevant at all.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry, Ian and Liz, fight it out. I didn't see you.
Had her hand up first.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about Daniel's comment and its relevancy, because I went outside this morning, this afternoon. The air's smoky. We're getting smoke from the West Coast.
Easy, yeah.
And my husband came home and says, "Does your throat hurt?" I mean, this is global warming in our air right now.
Ian?
Do you think that is? I smelled the smoke too, Liz. I didn't think that it would be. I thought maybe it was just somebody in town.
No.
Fair enough. Wow, that's, sorry, I'm shocked by that. I really like getting to ask questions about yearly things because this is my first time on the board, so I get to learn a lot. So Peter, my question to you is, so we have them locked in at this price per gallon for the entire winter?
Yes.
Wow. That,
Yeah, it's pre-buy, just as you would do a household pre-buy. So, you know, we will pay. Part of the reason we get a good price is because we're a large consumer. Part of the reason we get a good price is because as a large consumer, we pay a large amount when we pay up front. And then we receive the, you know, it's deducted. The cost of each delivery is deducted from the amount that we have paid. And then there's a settling up at the end.
yeah, wow. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as luck would have it, I locked in my oil price today, and I did not get $1.26 a gallon, but that's probably because I wouldn't know where to put $130,000 gallons. It's all about volume. Ian?
So is it the timing on this bid is like really crucial? Because
we actually we don't do playing the timing on this the way one might play timing in the market. You know, we're out for it somewhere between you know, mid-August and mid-September each year, because we need to be ready for when the weather turns cold. So some years we've been very lucky. Right now, you know, we're about at rock bottom on oil prices. But you know, it's not a strategically timed purchase. It's just part of the sort of rhythm of the implementation of all the various things we have to do throughout the year.
yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Board
And I
member?
should also note, we lean heavily on the school district for this. We participate so that the school district and the town get the benefit of the larger quantity of purchase. But the actual administrative work related to this bidding process is done by Frank Rucker over at the school district.
Thank you to Frank. Any other questions? It looks like Joseph has one more question for us concerning fuel oil. If you'd like to come up and ask us a quick question.
More just a quick comment. I mean, for people talking about global warming going on, I just wanted to point out that we are in the middle of a 22-year solar cycle, a solar minimum, actually, that just started this summer. So before you start blaming like ash in the air or fires in California on global warming or carbon dioxide in the air, you might want to look at like other variables such as the 11-year solar minimum we are currently in the middle of. That's all.
All righty, thank you. So, board members, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Lizzie, all right?
Go ahead.
I move to award the bid for the FY21 heating fuel oil to Barrows and Fisher Oil for 70,000 gallons of number 2 heating oil at a prepaid price of $1.259 per gallon.
Yes, it's always tricky how to say that. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah.
Ian has made a motion to award the bid for FY21 heating fuel oil for the town to Barrows and Fisher Oil for 70,000 gallons of number 2 heating fuel oil at a prepaid price of $1.25.9 per gallon. I don't know. That's another way to say it. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
And we have our next item on the agenda, and I would suggest that after we do this next item, we could take our 8 o'clock break. and that would set us up nicely to have plenty of time ahead. So the next item is the salt shed, which I think Dan Tyler is going to come back and give us a little update on. We need a salt shed, if you haven't heard.
Yes, this kind of sticks with the theme of it getting colder outside.
Indeed.
If you've been by Public Works, you've noticed that we no longer have a salt shed. That was the large wooden structure closest to the road. For the building itself dated back to the original fairgrounds. The structural engineer approximated it from the early 1900s. It's been in tough shape for a while. Towards the end of the winter, we noticed the roof structure buckling. We called the structural engineer in to look at it, and there was really just nothing we could do to save it. So we took the remaining salt out. That is temporarily housed in Guilford Salt Shed. That got us through the winter, and we demolished the salt shed. Since then, we've been looking into different options. The big thing we've considered is the uncertainty of what's going to happen with the Public Works facility. We're hopefully going to upgrade soonish and maybe in the same location, may rearrange things, may move. So we settled on a fabric, it's like a fabric top over a steel structure, like looks like a big tent. A lot of municipalities have gone this route. Sits on concrete blocks that are erected, stacked on top of each other. So it's not mobile, but could be moved if need be. Played with the sizing, tried to work with what's available through most of the manufacturers and what would work for us. The old salt shed held about 400 tons of salt. That's important because come winter, you never know exactly when you're going to get it. And we go through about 100 to 150 gallons, 100 to 150 tons of salt per storm. So we need to make sure we have plenty there. Really isn't any other place to store it. We kind of looked around. The other municipalities don't have the extra capacity. It's corrosive, obviously, so no one wants it in their buildings. So we feel like this is the best option. Put it out to bid. We had talked to several manufacturers of these structures beforehand, but we only received one bid from Iron Horse Structures. This is for a 40 by 60 building. They come and erect it. We asked for a price to erect it on a provided foundation, and the bid was $43,250. We also asked for an alternate bid for them to provide the foundation, and that's the concrete block set in place. The price for that is an additional $37,500. So what we would like to do is accept Iron Horse's bid for the building, the $43,250. And currently we're still exploring options of sourcing the blocks ourselves, placing the foundation, and might be able to save a little money. So we're seeking approval of up to the $37,500 for construction of the foundation. And that allows us to go with Iron Horse if we find that that's the best route. So the total would be $80,750. And yeah, so this was not budgeted. So we would like to pay for this, the $80,750 from the capital fund, and then ratify it at the next representative town meeting.
Peter, something to add?
Yes, please. Yeah, I'd like to just speak specifically to that about the ratification, and then also supplement a couple of the points that Dan made. So for those of you who've been on the board a while, you'll remember it was 2 or 3 years ago, that we had some erosion of an embankment going down to the railroad tracks out behind the Harris Place parking lot due to a drainage problem that we had there. And we couldn't wait to design the solution, get it all properly approved and funded in the normal manner, and then go out and construct it, because there was a concern that we could lose enough of the hillside there that it would actually go down railroad tracks. And in addition to obviously being terrifically hazardous, that was a huge liability for the town if we interrupted the movement of the trains along the tracks. So we had to move quickly. We did move quickly, and we went to the following year's representative town meeting. We went on the authority of the select board, allowing it to move forward because of the circumstances, and then went to representative town meeting the following year and had that action ratified. This is exactly what we're asking for you to permit us to do in this instance. I can certify, I just want to amplify the point about how decrepit the old building was. It's been something that we've actually been concerned might fail of its own weight. In recent years, we've had a fair amount of conversation about that at select board meetings and elsewhere. And when it was determined that it had become dangerous enough that we needed to abandon its use, and then brought in somebody, it hadn't fallen yet of its own weight, but we brought in a contractor to knock it down. We have a video that we'd be happy to share that literally the heavy piece of equipment that was there that you would normally envision sort of banging on, you know, the roof and the walls of a structure like this to make it collapse in on itself, it barely touched one end of the building and it went down like dominoes. So
hey, Peter, are you saying you have a video to share now?
No, I'm saying that if anybody wants to see the evidence,
Darn it.
this, you know, that I just want to certify that it was a real emergency. You know, it was something we saw coming, but we didn't actually get it done in time to avoid the emergency. The failure of that building represented, you know, a serious hazard and could have caused a lot of harm to people and equipment. And so it had to be removed. And now with winter coming, we have to put the new one in place. And so Public Works has come up with a good plan that allows us to move quickly and do it in a way where we're not overly committing to this footprint. We're able to disassemble this structure and move it elsewhere if we need to in the next few years.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, but I think Brandy was first.
I just wanted to say that this sounds prudent. It's getting cold already. I don't know if that's just a fluke. When we take our break, I'm going to be closing the windows in the room I'm in because it was hot when we started and now I've been sitting here freezing because I don't want to awkwardly lean over the laptop. So I like the idea of, you know, approving for the structure, having the money there for the foundation, looking around for another way, but the opportunity's there if it needs to be seized to do the foundation too. So I think this was well done.
Thank you.
Daniel?
Absolutely, I agreed. Like, this is a necessary thing for us to do. I'm a little surprised that it wasn't budgeted for, given that we had known for some time about the state of the previous salt shed. Mm-hmm. Could you say anything about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's something that we've had conversations about in prior budget cycles, and honestly, just didn't get ahead of it in this particular case. You know, in the weighing, and each year when we were making choices between prioritizing this or hoping we got another year out of it while we prioritize something else, we pushed our luck 1 year too far.
Okay.
Fair enough. Ian?
Dan, do you have any rough estimate on how much it would cost for the block foundation to be sourced by us and not from a contractor?
We're still waiting. There's a possible source for some concrete blocks that provided the security fence down at Vermont Yankee, and we're still waiting on a price for those. There are some other sources of what they call waste blocks. Essentially, when the concrete company gets done with the pour, they bring anything back that's in the truck and they pour blocks from it. Those might be slightly more affordable, but the quality of them isn't very good. I think if it came down to that, we'd lead towards this proposal. We're kind of holding out for those blocks at Vermont Yankee if we can work a deal on those.
Yeah. But this seems like a good solution then.
The other thing is the lead time is about 4 to 6 weeks on all of this stuff. So, you know, we'll probably have to decide one way or another pretty soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dan? I think I'm going to hold my question because I don't think it was that relevant. So it sounds as if we're going to explore something to try to not spend that last 37.5, and
Actually,
if we can.
Yeah, no, well, I'd like to just make clear that we expect to spend something for the foundation.
Okay, certainly.
And we're going to spend less than the 37.5 if we can. That's why we're asking for the ability to make that decision at staff level up to the cost of 37.5.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that we've seen time and time again when staff can save money, they certainly do. Liz?
Just wanted to commend the town for the Yankee thrift associated with using a building that was there since the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's been there so long, I'm sure it's got another year out of it, right? Unless you push on it. Okay. Any board member would like to make a motion? Randy.
I will move to award a bid to Iron Horse Structures in the base amount of $43,250 for the replacement of the salt shed at the Department of Public Works, and to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $37,500 for the construction of a block foundation for the new structure.
Thank you. Brandy has made a motion to award a bid to Iron Horse Structures in the base amount of $43,250 for the replacement of the salt shed at the Department of Public Works, and to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $37,500 for the construction of a block foundation for that new structure. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 It's 5-0. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Peter, as well. I think this is a perfect time to take a break, if no one has an objection. Shall we go to 8:05, just to keep us on task? Perfect. We'll reconvene at 8:05. Thanks, everyone, for hanging on. I'll call the meeting back to order, if that's okay. And hopefully we're refreshed. We have a very important community safety review to discuss now. And first on our two-part item, agenda F, is to select a facilitator. We have received 5 proposals from facilitators, and Peter, did you want to set this up a little bit for us? Or I think we're all very familiar with the documents, but I thought I'd give you the opportunity to make a comment if you'd like.
We did, as you said, receive 5 responses to the RFP. 4 of them were directly responsive to the RFP in its fullness. Those ranged in price from $10,000 to $175,000, with one of just over 30 and one of 116. So a wide range of pricing, a wide range of responses as expected, because the structure of the RFP was intentionally, it spoke to a vision about a process, but not to particular requirements for that process, and asked that the proposers address the certain elements that were included within the RFP in the manner that they deemed most appropriate, and then to provide the pricing that would go along with their description of what they thought would be an effective process. So we've received that from 4 separate potential facilitators. And there's a fifth proposal that was received from an individual who is offering to provide services that would run alongside the facilitation, explicitly not a fifth proposal to compete with the other four, but a proposal for some services related to research and some work that would be integrated with the work of the facilitators and the committee as this process moves forward, if that's in fact an approach that the select board prefers and that would work well with the chosen facilitators.
All right, thank you for that summary, Peter. As you all know, and everyone watching probably knows, we've been through a lot of hours of discussion about this, and this is exciting because we're getting to the nitty-gritty of our board's decision to talk about these actual real proposals we have in front of us. Liz, go ahead.
I reviewed the proposal in light of the criteria in the RFP. But before we run down that, I thought it might be helpful to hear from John Ungerleider, who had the more unusual add-on scope, to see what he envisions, because it's different and maybe collaborating. So if that's how you want to go forward, and if everyone wants to do that, I would suggest that that would be a way forward.
How do board members feel about that?
When you say hear from him, do you mean he's in the meeting and he'd like to speak, or?
Yes, he is, under his wife's name.
I was going to say, I didn't see his name in there. I believe we have a few of the folks who wrote proposals in the participant list.
I mean, I think it would be appropriate if we have any specific questions to any of the folks that presented, but Liz is right that John's is a little different. So if it's to your pleasure, the rest of the board, is that okay, or just an idea?
I feel like, hi John. I feel that the proposals other than John's answered what the RFP was calling for. And so I'd like to discuss those first. And then if we would like to talk about John's, in John's email for the proposal, it kind of said, I don't want to misquote it, but it said something along the lines of, this is not a proposal for facilitation. And that's kind of what we were asking for. So I'd like to talk about the other ones first.
That's how I feel too.
Sure.
That's fine. I would like the opportunity for John to say a thing. So, board members, do you want to give your initial impressions first, or you want to ask specific questions of certain proposers?
I'm happy to talk about how I felt about the proposals. As Liz did, I reviewed them with the criteria from the RFP in mind. That criteria was that they meet facilitator qualifications, that they have a comprehensive and achievable scope, that there are thoughtful measures of success, and also looking at the budget for the proposal. With those criteria in mind, I felt most positively about the proposal from Emily Megas Russell and Shay Witzberger. I think that's also not so surprising, given that those two people were involved in creating the RFP. Just in transparency, I just want to put that out there. But I've worked with Emily and Shay in the past in other projects, and I believe in their skills as facilitators. I also believe in their ability to connect with people in our community and bring their voices into a process that would not ordinarily find it easy to get into that process. So I think that their proposal answers the criteria most directly. And again, as I say, it's not super surprising. And then the other proposal that I was impressed by was the one from Training for Transformation from Oregon. And the thing that I liked most about that was that it, in a few different places, talked about really centering those that are closest to the pain. And for me, this process should be one where we are inviting in and trying to find out more about the experiences of people who are directly impacted by things to do with policing and other, I guess the phrase is carceral systems. I don't know if I'm going to pretend to say I know about carceral systems, but I'm going to just use that phrase. And so those were the two that stood out for me in that order. And that's all I've got to say for now.
Great. Brandy?
I thought I turned myself off, but I didn't. I agree with what Daniel said all the way before you said which ones you agreed with, Daniel. I looked at it with that same lens. Also, really wanting to think about who our community that we're going to be speaking to knows and who they're used to working with. I know that many members of our homeless community or unhoused community worked with Emily Mangus Russell pretty closely in a facility, in a capacity. I think that gives some good experience. I think our law enforcement officers are used to working or at least having communication with Shay and Emily. I think they're familiar faces, they're familiar names. And I think when we're trying to bring people who might feel a little skittish or uncomfortable into a process, having names and faces that they could see around town at any point is a good thing. I think the proposal from Oregon was good. I also like where they wanted the focus to be, but I think when we're really talking about lifting and bringing people into a conversation in our community, that it's super important that the people holding that space are local and known to all of us.
Thanks, Brandy. Oh, Ian.
Yeah. So much like Brandy and Daniel, I reviewed all of the proposals using the same evaluation criteria. I thought that it was really helpful to read all of them very thoroughly. And at the end, I'm not surprised that I also am in support of Emily and Shay's. We spent so much time working on the language of the RFP and trying to really capture what the community wants and what we want out of this. And the fact that they were involved in that discussion meant that their proposal really reflected that that effort, and I'm in full support of that. I would say that John's kind of other idea is really interesting. And I would really like to hear from him about if the board were to want to move forward with Emily and Shay's, if they would have any interest in collaboration, because I think that he had some really good ideas that I would like to see happen if we can.
Thanks, Ian. Liz, do you want to jump in, or do you want me to?
Well, I'll give you my rundown. And I just have a question for Peter. Peter, do you want to see our ranking? Is that something that would be helpful to you in your process of getting back to people?
Oh, we just you're muted for a moment.
Yeah. Thank you. That's not necessary. It was meant to give guidance. Each of you in your own way is speaking to it as you have your discussion. So that's sufficient.
Okay, great.
We don't need to submit a score sheet.
Right. Well, and my ranking also had Emily Mangus Russell and Shay Witzberger as the lead, as the most responsive. I really liked, they had a schedule that I thought was achievable, and a nice chart or a survey for survey questions, etc. Anyway, I thought it was all very reasonable, and the others less so. And I think that I would also like to hear whether the two groups can collaborate, meaning Emily, Shay, and John.
Thanks, Liz. So, wow, this, okay, sounds like we're in a lot of agreement suddenly. No, not suddenly. I liked a lot of what Brandy said about familiar names and faces, and especially connection with community. I think this process, it's going to be really important to have a lot of back knowledge, a lot of prepossessed knowledge about the community because of the short time frame, among other things, but also because but it really also needs a very centered approach to the needs of Brattleboro, and some of the other proposals that were not local felt like terrific proposals, but not quite for Brattleboro, or at least for our own situation, our own population, unique population compared to, Portland, New York City, etc. So I'm trying to just come to this with the open stance and desire to make these outcomes, the findings fit Brattleboro. Otherwise, I don't feel it will be that much use. The outcomes won't be that much use to the select board, who will be making, whatever decisions on any recommendations. The other comment I had, to summarize, I was also leaning towards Emily and Shay. Both of them impressed me on different levels. Apart from the proposal, Emily, had a long conversation with Emily on the phone, and I'm convinced that as a facilitator, she has skills in that regard. I'm less familiar with Shay, although I have to say that some of Shay's comments during the long hours that I mentioned leading up to this were pretty impressive to me. I thought she was able to come to some nice, insights. And the last thing I was going to say is that in a quick conversation I had with our police chief, I'm pretty hopeful that there's going to be some things we can find out that the police also will embrace, and some ideas that will be very helpful to the select board. To that end, I just want to reiterate that these really, I want this to be a useful document but process for Brattleboro, for everybody in Brattleboro, as I keep emphasizing. I think that's all I have to say, but I do line up with, I think it was Ian and Liz, who both said they were intrigued by what John Ungerleider could bring to the equation, but I don't know what that means as far as our process, so we'll have to kind of figure that out. Liz?
Do we want to vote on the facilitator as Daniel identified, and then explore what John has to say?
Does that feel good to others? There's a thumbs up, nods. Ian?
No, we can do it that way. Sure.
Yeah, because we don't know if I don't know if they've communicated or.
They have.
They have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so should we vote on that first, or
yeah, let's get to it.
We also
let's flip the script here and go short instead of long. All
right, Daniel, do you feel like making?
Oh God, I have to make this up. I didn't have one ready. I move to accept the community safety review facilitation proposal from Emily Magus, Russell, and Shay Witzberger.
Well done. good makeup.
Yeah.
Okay, Daniel has moved to accept the community safety review proposal from Emily Megas Russell and Shay Witzberger. I have that name right? Liz?
Oh, there might be little tweaks to like the budget and so forth that we'll have to work out later. I don't know if Peter, you want to address that now?
Let's just say that the motion is there. I think I said it right, correct?
Yeah.
And we can have Peter address that question. Go ahead.
So I'm aware of one nuance that you'll likely want to address. I don't know, Liz, whether you're alluding to anything else. The one that I'm aware of is there's a recommendation embedded within this proposal that speaks to the compensation for the committee members. And I believe it is the select board's intent to decide that compensation and to pay it directly from the town to the committee members. And so I don't see a problem with that based on the wording that's in the proposal and the way the budget for the proposal is laid out. These are estimated costs, and that particular piece, I believe, could be extracted and paid in the manner that we previously discussed. And the rest of the proposal would speak for itself in terms of the estimated costs that are embedded in it related to the rest of the engagement. I would probably be worthwhile at this moment. I know Shay has had her hand up. Might be good to just get a confirmation from Shay and or Emily that they're viewing the financial relationship or the financial component of this relationship in the same way as I just described. But I think that would work just fine. I think the simplicity of the motion is perfectly acceptable.
Okay, I had that same thought about Shay, so if no one has a problem with that, I'd love to turn that camera on. If you'd like to join us. Welcome.
Hey, folks.
Hey, Shay.
So quick, you guys. Wow.
Don't jinx it.
Good work.
Voted yet.
Really impressive. I have to say a couple things. I want to respond. Thank you for your confidence. I want to say that I think how the money is dispersed is totally irrelevant to the material reality of the process. I think if you all were going to change the amounts by a big amount, we might want to talk just a little, only because we really were trying to think about equity, even in the budgeting. I think one of the risks, unfortunately, of the way that we did it is that we sort of undercut some professionals who do this as their work nationally. And some of those are people of color. And that I see as somewhat of a mistake, honestly, that you all are going to have to invest real money into this type of process over time. And so I want to say that we charged less per facilitator because we wanted to be able to give committee members who are impacted some actual substantial compensation to be able to show up. So I think if you wanted to change the amount to like way lower, I would think that might take some negotiation. But if you want to pay it directly and you want to keep it about the same, I think that I could ask Emily, but I think we'd be pretty open to that. And John Ungerleider and I have had a conversation. So at some point now or later, I would love to speak to that, possibilities and limitations around that collaboration. It was a good combo.
I'm sorry, Shay, when you were referring to the money, were you referring to the overall budget that you presented or simply the budget portion for the committee members?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be worth talking about if you were going to shift the budget radically anyway, because we're agreeing to do something on somewhat of a budget. But I was speaking specifically about the committee member stipend, that if you all had understood that you all would pay that directly, I think that that's okay with me. I think it would probably be okay with Emily as well.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that was clear. Peter.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to speak further to the balance of it, right? So I think that it's now clear the context in which you will have some further discussion and make a decision regarding the compensation for the committee members, I think is clear. I think it's important that the rest not be revised and negotiated for the integrity of a solicitation for proposals and then assessment of those and picking the one that you want to move forward with. I think it's actually important. The reason why there is this complication or a potential complication related to the compensation for the committee members is because in the development of the RFP, it wasn't explicitly requested for that to be a cost embedded in the proposal. And so there's this clarification that needs to happen about how we're going to move forward with that. The rest of the proposal, I think it's very important that in your, you've all expressed an intent to accept this proposal. And as you do that, I think it's very important that you accept it as it was made to you. And the rest of the budget speaks for itself in terms of how it addresses the other costs of this engagement.
And I will say too that we were not sure what the standard protocol was for you all regarding accessibility costs and whether or not you pay those out to committees, whether those exist at all in all committees, or whether or not that was something we needed to budget for. But it was really important to us that based on, particularly, I can just say off the top of my head, particular challenges nationally that deaf and hard of hearing people have with policing, not being able to respond to a command because someone doesn't hear it, right? That like, we want to make space for people in this process. So we wanted to really make sure that those accessibility costs were reflected. Mm-hmm. If it was standard protocol for you all to pay for those yourself, that would be another space for flexibility, but I think we're happy to hold that and try to keep, you know, that those accommodations within the budget too, if that works for folks.
Peter.
While we're clarifying, yes, and I think on that one, because it will be an as needed, you know, it'll be addressed as needed throughout this process, and so it's a cost that is unknowable at this time, but known to be something where there may be some costs. I think we on the town staff can be really helpful to the facilitators in connecting them to the right resources. There are people that we use very regularly for these kinds of services. And I also think that it's appropriate for that particular cost to be embedded within the proposal and be part of the cost of doing this work.
Great.
Right. Okay, thank you. So, a little unusual for us to have a motion on the floor, but Randy, was that a...
No, there's like a fruit fly that's bothering me. I think it lives in the aloe plant. Sorry, it makes me itchy.
You all want me to speak to this potential for collaboration now, or maybe after you make a motion? Or I mean a vote or whatever.
Why don't you do it now while you're here? That'd be great.
Is that all right with Daniel? Because it's your motion that's on the floor.
Huh, good point.
Yes, as long as we end up coming back to vote and that we vote as we intended to vote.
No, I think it's a vote.
I don't say anything now that's going to change everybody's mind.
Oh, God, no.
Why don't you vote? Why don't you vote?
Well, I don't know how the possible...
No, it's fine. I'm happy to hear about the collaboration or possibility of collaboration.
Great. John and I spoke. I read his addendum proposal, and it was a great amicable conversation. And I think that none of us knew when we were submitting what the other submissions were going to look like. And so I'm really grateful that he wanted to make sure that whatever process happened, there was an anonymous online way for the broadest range of people to participate. And he wanted to make sure that nonprofit leaders were engaged in the process. And I think that those things are also fairly well reflected within our proposal. I think that one point of slight difference in the way that those things are articulated to me is that he had some predetermined questions that he thought of, and Emily and I were really conceiving of the questions being the committee's work, that these are the experts that we're asking about their lived experience to bring those questions to the table, right? I don't know if this group of people would resonate with all, some, or none of those questions. I bet some, at least. But our understanding was that perhaps in the online way of collecting information, that's really the committee's responsibility to determine what those questions are. And so I think there's still space for collaboration there with John, if he's open to that. He named, and he's on here, so I don't have to speak for him, but that he was open to just sort of using his unique skill sets however they were most helpful in this process. And if he wanted to support that data collection, support some, or guide that in some way, I think that is welcome, probably. But I think that that's the committee's responsibility to determine what those questions are. Emily and I didn't want to determine what those questions were because we felt like that's the point of this process, is centering those voices of the people most impacted and having them, you know, ask as broad or narrow of questions as possible. But I think the intent of engaging a broad range of people safely is absolutely the same. So that was his sort of first part. And the second part, as I understood it, was getting together a group of nonprofit human service leaders to be part of the solution making. And Emily and I also have reached out to many nonprofit leaders already. There's a couple in the participants that were ready to step in if, you know, we went for another proposal that didn't meet their needs as much, frankly. My only concern with the way that was articulated within the process is that we are, again, close to the spirit of the RFP. We are wanting to make sure that people who enact the systems of our town's voices do not overshadow the voices of the people who experience the systems of our town. And I think that that means that John's idea is an amazing phase 2 or an amazing thing to bring to one of the other spaces that nonprofit human service leaders are already in collaboration working in, the CEC being one of many spaces that could happen, or it could happen independently, but I see that happening as a very soon after this phase 2, if the committee adds that as a recommendation, which I think that will be on the table as one of the recommendations. My only fear about doing that first is how are we gonna envision solutions if we have not yet created the map of where the gaps are, where the possibilities are, what's working and what's not working. The people in positions of power within the human service realm are already doing great work to imagine solutions and enact collaboration. But the purpose of this process is, are we sure we have the right voices that we're really listening to of people who are underheard in this world? And can we hear those the most loudly for a moment and then use that brilliant knowledge and wisdom and information and hand that over to you all, hand that over to the police department, hand that over to the these groups of people to enact systems change eventually, maybe in January even, right after the reports come out. If we do that too soon, I don't know that it will be responsive to the wisdom that this process brings out. I think asking each of those folks individually, not in a group that's making decisions, but individually, what is your take, HCRS, on how you respond to crisis calls? What is your take, Groundworks, on the risks that the people you serve are experiencing is already in the proposal. So I think that especially in the first part of John's proposal, there's ample space for collaboration, and potentially he could lead this phase 2 part of the group that's coming together to make decisions about how we take these ideas and turn them into the flow chart that dispatch has of who they call, or, you know, whatever other decisions that group might come up with. And he seemed pretty open to that, but he may have other ideas. You may want to hear from him. That's totally fine. But that was kind of where Emily and I landed after our conversation, was like, yes, and a lot of it's already reflected in the proposal, and maybe the order of operations or who holds responsibility for the nitty gritty might be a little, there might be some difference in articulation there. So that's my rundown of the possibilities in the addendum. I think that our proposal standalone does include collaboration with listening to the police, listening to nonprofits, listening to human service people, and collecting data from people anonymously online broadly. So maybe it's already covered in the budget. Maybe we want to engage with him for some of those parts. That's for the will of the select board to decide.
Daniel, Ian, go ahead. And then I was gonna.
Shay, can I ask you a quick question? And I apologize if this is in here. As I said, I've read all of these more than once, so I may have just forgotten. You've got expected number of hours a week for the facilitators. I was wondering if you both have an idea of what you would estimate for number of hours a week for the committee participants. Oh, and you're muted, so.
Yeah, Patrick, if you don't mind unmuting Shay.
Thank you. I am not great at pantomime. I'm decent at pantomime. I think that is variable and depends partly on the next part of the conversation as I imagine it, which is how many committee members are there?
Yeah, okay.
We estimated like a max amount that there could be. I think that we were envisioning, as is reflected in the schedule, at least one meeting a week, potentially, as many committee members as possible. It's a very short timeline by December, so there's kind of a lot of work to do. Emily and I have availability to do that much facility. I think how we decide how much labor is ours and how much is the committee's partly depends on who shows up to be a committee member, how many of them there are, and how many phone calls and facilitated conversations and listening sessions we can achieve. And I think our goal is to engage the most people possible in that amount of time. So I'm not sure how much, we did reflect their compensation as a stipend, not as an hourly rate, which may be problematic to some people, but we figured is potentially a way to compensate enough for time and leave some flexibility in for the labor. My hope is that if those people are people who are connected to particularly different communities that are impacted by these systems, that those people will be enacting some of the listening sessions and the interviews and the, maybe facilitating some of those larger public meetings. And there's also space there for co-facilitation, particularly BIPOC leadership to potentially co-facilitate like a listening session for BIPOC people. So I don't have maybe Emily has a better response to that, but that would be my.
And can I, one follow-up, Tim?
Sure.
Because the board's about to talk about number of participants, do you guys have a thought on, now that we're probably going to vote we are going to vote you in, on what the what number, you can see that we have 26 people who have applied for it. So I think that information would be really helpful for the board to consider when we're making that decision.
Emily, if you're here, you can step in if you have a different idea. We reflected, I think, 9 in the budget. I don't know that a committee that's very, very small will be as effective at reaching so many people. I don't know that a committee that's extremely large will be as effective at handling the nuance and delicacy of this process as quickly as the deadline suggests. Frankly, it's going to be, there's potential, for it to be some challenge in these issues that impact us really deeply in our bodies. So I think I'm open to a 9 or maybe less, but that is in the hope that those people can help us expand the informational ask very greatly to many, many more people than that. I don't know if community members who have been part of the RFP drafting, or Emily particularly, have a contradictory opinion. I would love for that to be reflected in this space. That's just me. That's just share, but.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
9 could be great. 7 could be great. I don't know.
Can we return to the motion?
Yes, although immediately I'm feeling like a little bit like we were about to hear from John and we didn't, and we were Shay was just invoking his name. So can we have confirmation that jives with the conversation from John's perspective too, because it seems a little unfair not to do that. I know, Daniel, you're still pushing off your motion. I think it's the same motion, right? We're not. Mm-hmm. Is that all right? Can we hear from John to?
I think it's worth hearing before we vote, just so we can talk a little bit more about. Yeah,
it's a little unfair to bring out his name so much and not let him say a few words.
So Patrick needs to turn on Elizabeth Ungerleider's machine.
Oh, thank you for pointing that
out. I think I'm on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we'll make sure we don't forget Daniel's motion. I know.
I'll make sure. Don't worry.
Okay. And yeah, thanks. I think Shay and I had a great talk after these proposals were released on Friday. And my idea is to really, the committee is the central process, and my ideas are to be supportive and to feed in and to draw out of that process. And they're going to be busy, so they may appreciate it if we do collaborate at the time. But the two pieces, I think Shay described them pretty well. One is to do online questions, so not only that we get more ideas from broader range of people in the community and people who might not feel comfortable participating in a very public process, which was also in their proposal. I think it'll also help get a sense of just buy-in and people following the process and staying with it to the end when decisions are made. So I think there's sort of two purposes for that. And then the other one is trying to get the people who are the professionals who are, and Shay said, nonprofits but it's mental health, social service, community justice people, and people in the agencies in town and the police, I hope, that can really sit down and figure out in a very focused way what are ideas. I don't know when the decisions get made, but at least how to collaborate. And my sense was that one comes on the early side and one comes on the later side. The precise timing we would work out. I think in our conversation, and my questions are just sample questions, I'm not wedded to them. I did agree with Shay's idea that we should take ideas of the committee, but we need to do that early on to get those questions out into the community. And then we thought that this meeting of the professionals would come after the committee finishes. But I don't know how that fits with your process and the December 31st deadline and this and that. But I think we were in agreement about that one would feed in on the early side, led by the committee's priorities, and the other would follow soon after on the other side, again, reviewing the committee's results and trying to apply those to the challenges and applying the skills and the experience that they have as service professionals. That's it.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
My question becomes, so, okay, it sounds like these folks want to collaborate. So do you want to include John's inclusion in the process in your motion, or are we taking that as a separate, because we have two budgets to consider and merge?
So,
but I'm trying to figure out what's the proper way to address that.
I hear you. I support Shay and Emily's proposal, and that's what I heard from other members of the board. Mm-hmm. I think the points that John brings up are actually kind of embedded within Shay and Emily's proposal, and I know that John is a collegial collaborator and I believe has expressed, willingness to work with them. Whether that would be like a formal thing that we're budgeting for, I don't know. But the thing that I want to spend town money on is Shay and Emily's proposal.
Agreed.
Liz.
Then maybe we should have two votes. One on Shay and Emily's proposal and then one on adding John as a collaborator.
Well, okay. It sounds like we have three people very interested in these three people working together, the way I read it, and two board members, maybe one, possibly two board members that would prefer to move forward without necessarily accepting John's add-on, because to me, it sets it up for success if we have these three people working together. So I'm wondering if it makes sense to do two separate proposals. Liz.
Well, I just think there's a lot of work. I think it's important work, and I think Shay and Emily include a tremendous amount of work in their scope, and I think it would only benefit to have John collaborate with them, with his experience and restorative justice and everything else. I think it would make an even stronger, better team. So we can vote whichever way you want, but I would think that we should have Well, you decide.
I don't want to decide. I missed who between Ian and Brandy's hand went up first because I was looking away.
Brandy's
I think it was
hand.
Brandy then Ian.
I mean, can't we leave it up to them as adults to collaborate without us forcing a second vote? Or couldn't John join the committee or apply to?
Well, it's
Why
too
do we
late.
have to force a second vote to tell them to talk to each other?
They've already talked to each other, but we have to pay them both.
Yeah, and I mean, I see that extra expenditure as being entirely worth it.
Why do we have to pay them both? I thought we pay the one that we vote for. I might have missed something though.
You might have missed something, Brandy, because if we ask them to collaborate, but we don't hire them both, they can't collaborate.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, maybe 3 of us are.
Maybe.
Ian, yeah.
Brandy, do you have more? I don't.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll wait for a moment.
I guess what I heard from Shay was part of what John was proposing, if the questions came from the committee to go out to the greater community, was something that they could really see working with. And that the other part of it was potentially phase 2. I know I'm just repeating what Shay said, but I'm just sort of talking through it. So I don't know if it really makes sense to try to shoehorn it in now. Can we hire Emily and Shay and then ask them to talk to John? And then are we allowed to vote if they need more money to essentially hire John, because it's going to modify his proposal, because he may not do all of what he said in his proposal. And we're kind of setting a precedent here that we're not modifying proposals on the run, because we're essentially looking at what they propose and we're voting on it, yes or no. So it sounds to me what we heard from Shay was, yeah, some of this for sure, we talked together, it was a great conversation. Some of it, yes, some of it maybe later. So it sounds like we need to have them talk a little bit more, and then maybe we hire John for part of it. But I don't know if it makes sense to try to do that all tonight. And it sounds like we have consensus on Emily and Shay's.
Correct.
Liz.
Except for the first part, Ian just said that Shay said that she and John agreed that it would be good for his help on the survey. Again, it is a lot of work. And so John's proposal is very clearly delineated into 2 parts. We could hire him for the first part.
Yeah, we could hire Emily and Shay as the lead, and then take a separate vote for John's add-on services.
Let's do that.
Work out. Is that the same thing, Daniel?
I don't think so. I mean, the votes might go differently, but
it doesn't matter. That's fine.
Yeah, I really believe, I want to kind of come back to this. I feel like we landed in a classic place here where we were doing so well, and now we've fallen off a little bit. But I want to come back to the fact that we all had agreement around Shay and Emily's proposal. I think it's a really good proposal. I'm excited for it to move forward. I think that the 2 things that John's offering, A was, I'm looking at his proposal right now. A is online research, right? An anonymous way of collecting data. And I know that is something that was in the RFP, and I believe it's in Shay and Emily's proposal, maybe not quite as explicitly as that. And then I think the second thing, which is quite different, is this service professional working group, which, as has already been mentioned by Shay and by John, is probably more appropriate for later on. I'm excited to vote for Emily and Shay's proposal. that's what I intend to do when we come to that motion. If we want to take a second vote on also, asking John to do some work on this project as well, then so be it.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge there's a fair amount of community members that raise their hands.
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, I would accept Emily coming in because she's a co-proposer, but I'm also open to going ahead with your motion because you've been waiting, Daniel. So
I'd be happy to hear from Emily. I think that's reasonable.
Emily, would you like to chime in? Make sure you weren't mischaracterized or anything like that.
Hey, folks.
Hi.
Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I actually just want to encourage y'all to go ahead and make a motion. If you have any direct questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I get where y'all are coming from in wanting to encourage collaboration. There hasn't been any discussion about any of the other proposal where there's also potential for collaboration, but I guess I just want to encourage you to make a motion. If you have any direct questions, I'm super happy to respond. I think Shay spoke really well to like our discussion, her discussion with John, and also where we're coming from. I will say that our priority in collaboration is with people of color and queer and trans folks and folks who are psychiatrically labeled and folks who are otherwise have a lot of experiences to share with us around their experience of the Brattleboro police. So just want to be super clear about that being our priority in terms of collaboration, and open to collaborating. Generally will be collaborating, sounds like, with a lot of folks in town, and certainly happy to dialogue with John further. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, just want to point out the collaboration we're referring to at the moment is just with potentially John, who's another.
Right, and I do want to be clear that I don't necessarily support merging the two proposals. I do think, as has been discussed, that both an anonymous survey and also other anonymous ways to access information and to receive stories is certainly a big part of our proposal. And I'm in agreement to what Shay said about, and what John mentioned too, about phase 2 being more appropriate for the community nonprofits. I will say there are a lot of places where the nonprofits are already discussing these issues. I'm discussing these issues regularly with nonprofit leaders in town. That piece of work is already happening in a big way, in several different ways. So the relatedness to this proposal, I trust that in our proposal and our work, we will access that information as part of the work. That's very clearly part of what we will be doing. If you want to increase our budget to support more co-facilitation, like with John, that's something that can be discussed if that, but I don't necessarily support merging the two proposals in any particular way. It doesn't seem necessary. Yeah.
I don't think anybody was suggesting merging. Like it would be missing.
Okay, great.
I think we were referring to it as more of an add-on.
Right.
With you as the lead.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, how's the board feel? Daniel has a
motion on the floor.
Motion on the floor, which I'll probably have to figure out how I said that before. Is everyone comfortable, or Ian?
Yeah, no, I think like essentially we're going to hire Emily and Shay. We're going to kind of hand over this process next to them, because we are all in support of that. We all really like their proposal. And like, as we hire them, I think we can kind of give them the direction that, hey, we talked during this meeting, we talked about John's proposal, and there was a majority of people here who were definitely interested in some of those things. Sounds like you guys have already talked about it. Can you please have another discussion with him, and if you want to not merge, if you want to use any part of his proposal, and if he needs money for it, can they just come back to us and ask us to fund that part of his proposal?
I thought it might be a situation, yes, maybe, but I thought it was going to be a situation where we would authorize, if they look like they could collaborate, we would authorize the funding of his as well, rather than try to get under the hood.
I feel like from the discussion tonight, it sounds like if they had kind of said like, oh, like everything works for both proposals, like their full support, then I think I would be in agreement with you. But because it sounds like there are differing opinions about some of it, I think that we should vote for Emily and Chase, and then give that direction to them to talk more with John. That's my position. So I'm ready to vote.
Go.
Okay. Liz, you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Do I have to repeat it? We have a motion on the floor to accept the proposal. Just leave it at that. From Emily Magus Russell and Shay Witzberger. All those in favor? Indicate by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, and that's 5-0. Okay, congratulations to Shay and Emily, and potentially John. We'll see what happens.
Do we want to take a vote on that? Because I'm not sure. So Ian's referring to consensus. I know that Liz and Tim feel that they would like to see collaboration between those two. I do not feel a need to like force collaboration on Emily and Shay. And I just want to be clear about like who supports that and who doesn't.
I think it's micromanaging to force collaboration with anybody. I think if people want to collaborate, that should be something that comes out of a natural passion to do so.
Well, there's natural passion, and then there's hiring someone.
Right, but they can come back and say, we found a natural passion, and then we decided we wanted to hire someone. And we'll be open to that conversation. I'm not going to make that choice for them. Why would we do that? We're trusting them to facilitate an entire possible change of municipal and policing procedure, but we don't trust them to know who to collaborate with on their own.
But they have talked, and there is usefulness to both things.
They can make that decision.
And there is a lot of work to do.
They can make that decision too.
Well, let me back that up for a second. That language was a little difficult for me, Brandy. They're not facilitating a change in any kind of town.
Okay, they're facilitating a conversation that could possibly at some point impact policies and procedures at a municipal or law enforcement level.
All right, I'll ignore the unnecessary sarcasm and accept it.
I know. Great, thank you.
Peter, do you want to make a comment on if we have 3 board members that want to keep open the possibility of a collaboration? Is that a fair way to describe it for everybody? And we want to make sure that money to make that possible would be available. It feels to me that we should have some sort of motion to that effect.
I think it's purely at the board's discretion whether you take an action related to that this evening or whether you wait for a more definitive ask from the facilitators you've hired to lead the effort to define how much more money they might need and for what purposes they might need it. And then you could address that very specific ask. If you wanted to take an action this evening related to the materials that are before you this evening, I think the way to do that would be to authorize, and I'm going to round the numbers here just to make it simpler to address because it's going to be within dollars. You could authorize that the fee quoted in the proposal be that the total expenses related to the fees to be paid to the facilitators and the other incidental costs of the effort be an amount not to exceed $40,000. And what that would do is allow funding within the budget for the effort sufficient to cover the costs that John has estimated, but you would be leaving to the evolution of the process under the leadership of the facilitators the decision of when or how to call upon that resource.
Okay, even though we don't yet know the amount that's going to be dedicated to committee member stipends, correct?
That's correct. That's a decision you'll make later this evening.
Yeah.
I guess I'm assuming in the advice I just offered that you wouldn't go to a figure that's higher than what was embedded in the proposal, but I suppose you, depending on the number of the combination of the amount of the stipend and the number of committee members, it could end up being a total figure for the cost of the committee that exceeds what's in the proposal. That's as good a reason as any to wait and address potential supplementary services when there's an explicit ask in front of you. I was trying to be responsive to the question you asked about the potential of addressing it tonight.
Okay. Okay. So we have a successful act there. Do we want to move on to our next item?
Sure.
Was what Peter explained able to be accomplished without another vote?
Either way, you would need another vote. You would either have another vote this evening to augment the budget and then leave it to the discretion of the facilitators, or you would leave your action as is this evening and understand that the facilitators might come back to you at some point to propose some supplementary work with a particular price tag attached to that.
Yeah, and I just thought we should wait till after the next discussion.
I think we should, because the stipend conversation is in fact separate, that if we follow what Peter suggested for raising the stipend for raising the facilitator contract to include the collaboration, if once they discuss and they wish to, then they don't have to come back. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, so that's the only difference, is that if we don't raise the ceiling on it, they would need to come back to us and tell us what they need it for and ask for an additional X number of dollars. Am I understanding that, Peter?
I'm suggesting that you not direct action without funding. So you either increase the budget this evening so that the collaboration can occur if the facilitators decide that it is actually going to fit in the program that they are now charged with leading. They'd already have funding available to pay John as a subcontractor. Or that it just be the action you've taken to hire Emily and Shay and launch the process, be left alone. And at some point during the process, you know, based on the fullness of all this consideration, they might come back to you and say, we'd like to accomplish a certain specific supplementary task or tasks, and we need supplementary funding of X. And it would be a very specific piece of work and a very specific funding ask at that time. If you do it tonight, it can't be very specific. So what you'd be doing is simply augmenting the budget to make room for the possibility that that work might occur.
Randy?
And assuming that that work would only occur with a specific collaborator, is that correct? Because we don't know who they might come back and want to collaborate with.
I think that's something you'd want to hear from them further on.
Right, that's what I mean.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, they might come back to us with some collaboration we never would have thought about, or they never would have thought about. So I'd hate to lock that in so early.
Yeah, I could see it both ways, but I don't know. I feel like, Daniel.
Can I say, so we took an action to hire Emily and Shay because we trust them to do this work. And I'm going to trust them to come back to us if they need to contract with somebody else to enhance their work. Certainly the idea is out there. Certainly conversations have been had, but at this point, I'd like to show them that we trust them and let them go ahead and do this work.
Liz?
I think we heard pretty clearly from Shay that John's first item was welcome and would help them. And most importantly, she said, and I think John said as well, that it would help garner a consensus and input from the town as a whole as we go forward and buy-in of the process as it continues. And I think that's a really important part. And then, you know, the second part may or may not be useful, but I think we have a lot of work. They have a lot of work on their plate in a very short time frame. And, you know, another pair of hands would be useful. So I like Peter's first thought of raising the ceiling now, give them the flexibility to do that without the trouble of coming back, and let them see if they want to work together, great. If they want to work together on the first part, great. If they want to work together on both parts, great, or not. It's all great, but I think we should give them that flexibility now so that they can, you know, get started. And, you know, the complexities of what questions to ask on the survey and whatnot, which is an early task, could be worked out among them very quickly and easily and not delay the process. So I vote for voting on increasing the ceiling and having that vote now.
To make that vote, I would need a motion, and I'm not supposed to make motions.
Okay, I move to increase the ceiling for the facilitator contract to $40,000 so that they have the flexibility to have incidental collaboration services as needed.
Daniel, I guess sorry, I raised my hand.
Stand by. Liz has made a motion to increase the ceiling to $40,000 to give flexibility to the chosen facilitators. So there's a motion on the floor. Ian?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to interrogate Daniel for a moment. I'm just curious. You know, we heard that there was some interest in some of the things that John has proposed from who we have now hired to give them a little flexibility so they don't have to come right back to us if they need more money to do that work. I don't really see why we would be opposed to that.
Yeah, no, I think Liz's motion as she made it is perfectly fine. We increased their budget to give them some flexibility. We did not direct them to only work with a particular person. They may contract with whomever they please, you know. That's what I understood the motion to be. I'd be happy to support it.
I would support a motion that doesn't lock them into a specific collaboration, but leaves the money there for any collaboration that their expertise deems necessary.
Yeah, and I mean, and I would honor what, I mean, also the discussion tonight that there was clearly consensus or some agreement in that discussion. Yeah, I don't know. This doesn't really seem like that difficult. But.
Yeah, my only question is a sort of a point of order if that number works, if the decision we make about the payment line for committee members gets changed, which I think it probably will. Peter?
Yeah, if I could speak to that, I think that you know, we already addressed that earlier as part of your earlier motion. So you accepted their proposal, and we acknowledged in the discussion around that there's I think, just shy of $9,000 in there for paying the stipends to the committee members that in fact might be paid by the town and might not be in exactly that amount, in which case the hiring, I think it's very clear in this public record that the hiring of the facilitators to otherwise fully fulfill the proposal that you've accepted would just be that funding for the stipends would be deducted from the 32,000 and change that is the total figure that's in the proposal. What we're saying now, I think, doesn't change that earlier discussion regarding the stipend. It just takes the 32,000 and change number and increases it to 40 with the explicit understanding that it provides some flexibility to the facilitators if they determine that they want to hire some supplementary professional assistants to do work of the nature that is proposed in the Unger letter proposal.
Okay, as long as I don't have to say that, include that in Elizabeth's motion.
I understand that to be the impact of Liz's motion if you approve it.
Absolutely. So once again, Liz's motion is to increase the ceiling to $40,000 to facilitate collaboration without naming any names. How's that sound, everybody? Sound accurate, Liz?
Yes, thank you.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And that's 5-0. Terrific. Congrats. And we are going to continue with our deep discussion here on community safety process with our next item of business is to determine the number and the compensation for committee members. And I'm open to anyone who wants to kick that off. I do have some ideas myself, of course.
7, and there was a budget for it in the proposal that was part of the consideration. So I'm fine with that. How about that for a starting place?
So that's 7, and I believe it was $950.
Yeah.
Right? Per committee member?
Yeah.
Liz? Wait, we don't have to take this together, actually, by the way. But
I know, I just, seemed like they were.
You think it'd be faster to do them together or separate?
No, I mean, it's a consideration. We put it together, because they determine the ultimate money we're spending, taxpayer money that we're going to be spending. So they're related directly. So I think Daniel was completely appropriate. But go ahead, Ian, or
Liz had her hand up.
Well, I think what we need to talk about first is that we're making an exception, a very rare exception to our usual method of business in Brattleboro that spans the entirety of town government. We get a stipend that's very meager, and here's the stipend for just a few months' worth. So all the other town committees don't get paid at all. And we have agreed in principle to paying participation in this particular committee for the very important reasons that they are. But I think that while we're deciding this amount, and I understand Shay's statement of making it worthwhile for the participants. We just need to be careful that we don't make a precedent for the town that's unworkable for the future.
Ian or Brandy, want to jump in? Or?
My earbuds were a little weird right there. I didn't hear what Liz's proposal was.
Oh,
I didn't have a proposal. It was a comment.
Oh, okay.
there was a comment about the precedent.
Okay, so I was thinking more, I liked the idea of around 9 people. I thought that that was good. Personally, I had thought 11 at first, but I think 11 can be kind of unwieldy in general, not just for payment, but just for process too.
Did you want to make a comment on payment amount or?
Well, I'm interested in the 700, but I'm also interested in what other people have to say about numbers of the committee, because I think that will drive a little bit of the payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just give out, I'll give my proposal and I'll just give my reasonings. So I started at 13, which I think is too big after everything that everyone says, mostly because we had 26, so I cut it in half. And I was like, perfect, 13. And then I read a bunch of stuff online. First off, doesn't seem to be any consensus on what the perfect number of a committee should be. So no surprise there, but it seemed like 13 may be a little big. So, you know, the biggest committee, Peter, it's 9 that we have currently. So the biggest committee we have in Brattleboro town government is 9. I walked down to 11 in my head and then still kind of felt like it was too big. So I kind of fall at 9. That's where I'm at. Partially because I know how difficult it's going to be to select out of our really a number of really qualified and good candidates. So that was part of it. And then, so then the other thing for the stipend, so I just did a quick calculation. So I looked through, because I knew I was going to vote for Shay and Emily's proposal. I went through their really great schedule, and they had 16 weeks as I counted them numbered. And I think there's actually only 15 weeks, or I miscounted, but I'm going to give another week at the end because they're going to be pushing to get the thing done. So I said 16 weeks, and then I said, all right, let's say each committee member works 3 hours a week at a session. So they're going to have a session for 3 hours every week. That's a complete guess. I have no idea if that's accurate or not, but I just needed a number. And then I said, let's give them a livable wage of $15 an hour. So, and it came out to $720. And then, because I like more rounded numbers than that, I bumped it up to $750. And that's my number. So
Such a lawyer.
9 members, $750 for the stipend. And that's where I'm at.
That's hysterical. Not the number amount, but just like your process is so familiar to me.
Liz, do you want to go or do you want to break and I'll jump in?
You go and I'll go last.
Okay. Well, it doesn't feel like the members question is going to be that tough for people, for us as a group. I was going to go low because I just was concerned about the amount of work and the amount of nuttiness that it gets into when you get above like 5. But no, I was going to suggest like 6 or 7 myself. So my official vote number is, let's say 7 to line up with Daniel's. More important to me is this issue of the stipend. I want to echo what Liz says. Liz said, I'm very concerned about the precedent-setting nature of it. I do acknowledge that this is a very big ask and it's a quick timeline, so that certainly is a good argument for a stipend. But I have to be honest, the numbers that are being thrown out were higher substantially than what I was thinking. And when you say living wage, wow, I mean, we don't get paid living wages for doing what we do. And I understand that we have all figured out how to make it work in our lives. So it's a little bit of apples and oranges. But I've been getting a lot of feedback from community members about, on one level, just the idea of paying a committee, and are you going to start paying all the committees, and is this something that the taxpayers have to be prepared for, that kind of comment. And the idea of stipends, it should be exactly that. As you all know, our stipends that we get, it's great when we get them, but we certainly couldn't quit our day jobs, as you say. So my number was 200, 250 tops. So that's where I was sitting with the number, because we're all throwing out numbers. But and that, honestly, that is sort of like, that was my upper. But I'm going to make my upper my number, because it seems like the fair thing to do in a collaborative decision like this. So is that enough for now, Liz?
Well, I was thinking more in the lines of 250. And I don't care, 7 or 9 people, it doesn't matter to me. But, you know, what was Ian's number?
750.
750. And, you know, we could compromise. How would that be? Sometimes
Hard.
around you know, 500. I think 500 is a nice, you know, for a precedent-setting move. I mean, it certainly makes a statement, and it gives people a decent stipend for their effort.
Can I raise something that maybe is a curveball? You know, so we had a fairly lengthy discussion on Saturday about select board stipends, and like none of us spoke up because that would be super awkward, right? Oh, I think you did. Sorry, my bad. And one of the things that I've been wondering about, you know, this is that some people need the money and some people don't. And so I wondered if there could be, at the beginning of the committee process, you know, do you want to accept the stipend for this work? Yes or no? And you don't need to tell us why. We don't need to see documentation, right? You just tell us yes or no. And some people will say yes and some people will say no. And the town, I'm sure, will end up saving some money that way if we're concerned about saving money. That is my proposal.
There's a couple of different ways you could approach it, like sliding scale. Ian.
So that's exactly what happens with the work I do as a member of the Board of Civil Authority. So they ask me when I helped run the election, they asked me, do you want to get paid? And it's not very, like, the hourly rate isn't, I don't remember what it is, but they just ask and you say yes or no. So there probably is precedent to do something like that. Yeah. And I'm sure, yeah, I mean, there may be people who don't feel like they need to be paid.
Right.
What do you think, Peter? Is there a process for that?
So what Ian describes with the poll workers is the closest we have in town. We don't really have precedent for it in town, but we do have people who volunteer to assist with the elections and other people who get paid a small amount to assist with the elections. So that's a good example. That's a local example. The example that is more directly related to committee service is that the state of Vermont does pay under some circumstances. I don't know all the details of that. You know, when there are stipends and when there are not, and how the amounts are determined, whether that's a legislative act or whether that's something that happens in the departments of the state. I just don't know the details of that. But there is service that people render, you know, more or less as volunteers to the state of Vermont on committees, where there is some compensation that is at least offered to folks. I serve on the board of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, VLCT. offers people payment for that and transportation reimbursement. And because I'm employed by the town as a full-time job, the town of Brattleboro receives the money that I otherwise would receive from the league. Individuals who are town officials in other communities who don't do it as full-time work, some of them receive that stipend from the league as personal compensation. So there's just, I don't know if that's helpful to you. That's a few different ways of looking at how some other organizations handle the provision of stipends. In none of those cases does it speak really to the equity issue that is in this matter for us as a community, in terms of the basis from the meetings this summer for why there would be a break from precedent here in Brattleboro and an offer of a stipend for this particular work.
Oh, Brandy, yeah, you had your hand up right as Peter started talking.
Okay. Always defer to Peter whenever needed. When we were chatting with Shay way back, I feel like it was mentioned that if we were going to do a small deviation from budget, no big deal. How we wanted to do the payments, no big deal. But if it was going to be larger than the deviation from the proposal, then we should probably have a formal discussion. Now I'm trying to pull up the proposal to remember what was proposed.
$950.
Oh, okay. I just want to keep that in mind because we had kind of all nodded and then we accepted the proposal, and then I don't know, 250 or 500 might be a large deviation, and I don't know if that means we need to bring them back into the conversation. I just was writing that down.
I think they both have their hands up.
Liz first.
Well, if we take Peter's suggestion of, state committee stipends, I know that there's state committees that pay $50 a meeting. And that's right on par with Ian's suggestion of $750. Is that what yours, $750, Ian?
$750, yeah.
And it's just not that much of a reduction from what Shay proposed, I think, to open up the question. So I would be comfortable voting for some $750.
Yeah. Can I speak to my proposal for just a second?
Sure.
I just, I just kind of, when I was first thinking about this question, I just sort of felt completely I could just pick a number, but it seemed like there just need to be a structure to just determining it. So I'm happy to, I'd love to hear from Shay and Emily if they want to talk about it more. But that's, it wasn't really a rejection of any, and Tim and Liz, I'm not really rejecting your positions either. This is really new ground. Tim, two things I want to just correct. One thing to correct the record. When I say livable wage, what I meant was like I needed a number. We needed a number. I started with what minimum wage is in Vermont and was shocked at how low it is still, and then realized that's not enough. So that's how I moved it up. And then the other thing is, we have 26 people applied for this, and I don't know if any of that was affected by the fact that they knew that they were going to be paid some kind of stipend, but even if it got a couple more people to apply, that's huge. So, we're setting precedent, and I know it's kind of murky. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion.
Great. Because I think it was very clear from the start to Shay and Emily that the portion that they apportioned to committee members might very well be changed or pulled out, as Peter explained. I'm feeling like we should really just make this decision, but if the rest of the board really wants to hear from them concerning the decision that is wholly ours, if you're concerned that they wouldn't want to do the process because of what we're paying committee members. I'm surprised, but we can hear from just Shay and Emily if you'd like. Otherwise, I want to do our board business.
I think we will be compromising and can all focus on Ian's proposal of 750.
Daniel, that's, Brandy, you said 700 first time, but did you mean the proposal amount 950? I was a little confused.
Mm-hmm. I did. That's why I had to pull it back up, because then I started thinking, wait, we just accepted a proposal that specifically stated something. And that's why I raised my hand back up. And that's why I wondered if we wanted to hear from either Shay or Emily. Both hands are up, so I don't know how you pick from that, but.
I got a feeling that Tim just wants us to vote on this as a board. Is that right, Tim? I'm trying to read your mind.
It is,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure
That's
I
fine.
heard correctly about my point about the proposers were very understanding that that line item could get pulled out and completely handled by the select board. That's our purview.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with their proposal.
Can we make sure that whatever amount we decide upon, we give the participant the option to either accept it or reject it?
Yes, I like that.
I do like that too.
Well, I think it should be like a ceiling, right? So up can be paid up to.
Okay, sure, that works.
If we're deciding numbers, but
yeah.
The other thing that would influence how much that number I would vote for is the number of members. So I will return to like urging 7, not 9.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm happy with 750.
I'm happy with 750 and 9 members.
Okay, so I hear from Tim.
I'm saying 7, not 9 members. Just to be clear.
So I'm hearing from Tim that he would be okay with 750 if it was 7 members, not 9 members.
How about 8?
I think it needs to be an odd number.
Yeah, it should
Me
be.
too. Yeah, it creeps me out.
Can I just say, I don't think that the number of participants should drive the stipend.
No,
the
I don't.
stipend is about the work, and the number of participants is just about how we think the committee should be structured.
I go with 9 because of, the way that Shay and Emily thought through the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they expect the committee to do a lot of work and they need the people to do it.
Great.
So I'm comfortable with 9 and 750.
I'm comfortable with that too.
Yeah, and I'll just make the point that we're in a global pandemic, and so I think having a couple more bodies on the committee in case someone can't participate at the point would maybe be.
Wow.
I don't mean it like.
Wow, Ian.
No, not like that. They're not getting like that. Like they get sick or they have to go take care of somebody.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get what you're saying.
No, that like if we have 7,
I'm only teasing.
We want this committee to do well, and sometimes people might not be able to participate as fully because of the fact that we're in a global health crisis.
See, actually, Daniel, make my point.
There we go.
Okay.
Wow.
I just want to say that there's definitely 4 votes for 750 and 9 members. I'm going to vote against this because I would prefer 7 members at 500.
Okay.
Okay.
That will not stop this from going forward. But I have a problem with spending more than $3,500 on this committee that's going to last.
Well, we might find out that because people say, I don't need it, that we don't spend that much. I mean,
that's true.
Okay.
We're talking about ceilings here. We're talking about up to. So somebody who likes this idea can propose a motion if you'd like. If you're insisting on you want to hear from.
Are we still making up motions?
Yes, yes, we are.
Fantastic.
Wait, Peter wants to talk.
Okay.
Oh, you've got a few different pieces to this. I think you have settled in on what 4 of you agree on. And if it would be helpful to you, I could phrase it for you so someone can say so moved.
It's always helpful when you do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Especially past 9 p.m.
So the motion would be to establish a committee of 9 members and to offer to each committee member a stipend of up to $750 to be paid in the amount that the member determines.
So moved.
All right.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. That's 4-1. Congratulations, you have an action.
Fantastic.
Woof.
Oh, but we still have one more thing.
Is it still summer?
Somewhere.
Not
Yes,
tonight.
We have one more week.
It's freezing.
Got to change the batteries in our fire alarms soon.
Oh, yeah.
Our last order of business is committee appointments. And what board member is on top of this? Who's not?
We've got one tonight. We have a, should I just give the nomination or should I say other words? Because I've got it right here.
Go for it.
You go straight to
Okay.
nomination.
So for committee appointments, I would nominate, and I'm going to mispronounce the last name, Art Meese, for appointment to the Conservation Commission. And this is what happens when you only read people's names, but you don't always say them out loud. So that's how I read Art's name. And I believe it's Farr, but
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Farr, right? Yeah.
It's Farr, yeah. But I still never say his last name out loud, but that's my nomination.
Okay, and is that the only one? I'm not looking at the sheet.
That's the only one I see.
We have a nomination of Art Farr Meese to the Conservation Commission. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that's 5-0. Thank you.
Great.
I think we've done our business, board.
Sure have.
In record time.
All right, congratulations, everybody. Would anyone like to make a further motion?
I move we adjourn.
Randy's moved to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Town staff, BCTV.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.